All right, guys, good morning. Welcome to the weekly show here. Glad you could join us. And for those listening to the recording, we appreciate you coming back. Have a pretty awesome show planned out here, but we're going to go ahead and open up in a word of prayer here. Father God, we praise you for this beautiful day. We thank you for everything that you're doing in this area in Pennsylvania and in the surrounding regions, God. We pray that this show would be encouraging and enlightening to those who listen, and I pray that you would give them supernatural favor throughout their day and their week and the rest of this year, that you would open their eyes to new opportunities, that you would just help them, help them see the course to fulfill the plan that you have for their kingdom's sake. And we praise you and thank you in your name. Amen. So, Naftali is busy this week. He is at a conference, so he will not be joining us. We do have a new guest on the show, Elias. Welcome on, Elias. We are pumped to have you joining us today. And so, I'll tell you what, why don't we go ahead and kick off? Why don't you go ahead and give a brief kind of rundown of who you are, why you're interested in the investing space, maybe how old you are, and so forth, just so the community can kind of understand where you're coming from. And just one more friendly reminder for everybody, this is not financial advice. We are not financial advisors, so do not take it as such. So yeah, Elias, the floor is yours.
Sweet, thank you. You able to hear me?
Yes, sir. Sound good.
It's a little quiet on my end. I'll connect to nearby here in a second. But basic rundown is I'm 21 years old. I'm from the area, and I am starting a company called Inheritance. And basically, what I'm hoping to start it as is like a consulting firm, just because it's, to me, I think is the most logical path forward. But my end goal is to kind of help people do anything and everything related to finding their purpose and then pursuing that, and making sure it's in alignment with God. So not specifically making money off of people's faith, but kind of making money off of helping people grow their businesses and their brands. And then if we can help them align it with Christ along the way, then that's kind of the goal. So as far as my investing and finance knowledge, I was a student at West Virginia University, and I had a minor in finance. I just graduated this year. So I know a little bit. I don't know a ton. I would say a good amount, but nothing compared to like an actual analyst. But it's something that's been like a passion of mine. I've always enjoyed it. I think that the analytical side of things is super cool. So yeah, I just kind of look into what piques my interest and run with it. I try to make sure that I'm, as well informed as I can be. And if I don't know, then I say that I don't know, and I try to learn as fast as I can.
Amen. Good stuff, man. Thanks for sharing. So we're pumped to have you on, and look forward to hearing your insight. But we'll go ahead and get the show kicked off here. I want to touch on real estate, particularly in the Northeast sector. And so it's been a very, it's been a super, I would say, interesting couple months here, because I wasn't entirely sure the direction that the market was actually going to head. I had a feeling it was going to be rather bullish, and so that's kind of what I was leaning towards. And so I actually just yesterday looked at the recently sold section in Zillow, and I was also looking for houses available on Realtor, Realtor.com. I use both of those, Zillow and Realtor, in our area here. And so, for reference, the median house price in our county is around $200,000, which is pretty significantly below the median average of the country. I believe it's like $415 right now. And so we live in Pennsylvania, obviously, and I was kind of surprised to see so many of the homes that are listed in the areas. They're pretty much all pending, and so that was really interesting to me. And I started looking around neighboring areas, more towards Johnstown to be specific. And historically, Johnstown's been a pretty not great market in the last couple decades, but as I was looking, I noticed that a lot of the decent houses up there were also marked as pending as well. And so to me, that's telling me there's pretty high demand. I actually had three different neighbors of mine list their house for sale. I kind of live towards the country a little bit between two small towns. Pretty nice out here, but nonetheless, um, first neighbor listed their house. It was sold within a week. Their asking price was 750 grand. It was considered a luxury house, very nice, but still to be sold within a week after, or for such a high price for the area, I should say, is very unusual. We tip those houses typically take months to sell. So that was interesting. Another neighbor listed their house for sale for 300 grand, and the house was about 1,500 square feet. It was a nice house. It was remodeled pretty nice. It didn't really have any land with it, although it did have a beautiful view, and it sold within a week. And when I mean sold, I mean it's under contract, just to clarify. And then another neighbor just listed their house. Pretty interesting place. It was built in the 1800s, old house, and not really upgraded at all. It has the original wood floors, which are decent, but I mean, I think most people, if they bought it, they would probably, bring in, paint the walls, maybe redo the kitchen. So you probably have a fair investment there. Nothing major that needs done, but I think most people would probably want to remodel it. But nonetheless, they listed theirs for 160, and it is also under contract within a week. So, three examples, interestingly, all across the spectrum. I would consider the 160 more the lower end, entry level. The 300s kind of more upper middle class, maybe. And obviously, the luxury at 750 is for the upper class. But all three of those are basically, they sold extremely quick. And so, there's an interesting conviction between what's happening right now in the Northeast and what's happening in the South, and I think a lot of people think that because prices in the South and other hot areas are starting to kind of collapse or pull back, I should say, that's going to happen up here too. But based on what I'm seeing, I'm pretty confident that prices in this area, at least in Pennsylvania, are going to hold steady and they're going to keep appreciating. I just did a video recently on YouTube. You can check it out. But it kind of goes over this information in specific. And, the median priced house in Pennsylvania is about $309,000, which once again is over $100,000 less than the median average for the nation. And so we're still pretty cheap up here. And there's some new code going into effect, building code. And so if you want to build a new house, you now have to use a lot more insulation basically all around, which is estimated to add in the ballpark of $30,000 to the average house build costs. And so I think the cost to build around here is probably around $250 per square foot. So you build 1,000 square foot, you're talking $250,000. And we actually had somebody ask my dad. They were thinking about buying a old house on a lake nearby, and the price was $1,000,000, and the guy was actually going to bulldoze the existing house and build a new house. And when he said it was 250, basically 250 grand for 1,000 square foot, the guy wasn't too pleased. And so I think a lot of people don't really understand how expensive it is to build right now, and that those prices are continuing to go up, but I don't see how they're going to come back down anytime soon. And so, one more factor to add into this, I think, where they're cracking down a little bit on the immigration stuff, and so immigrants are, I would say, probably a large portion of home builders, which breaks my heart because I feel like to a degree it's morally wrong to. It's morally wrong for multiple reasons. You're paying people way below the going rate to do a job, and if people come up from Mexico and they put a roof on or they build a house and they work hard and they do a good job, I think they deserve equal pay that somebody in America would receive doing that job. And the second reason, once again, is because you're taking to some degree, you are taking work away from locals and American citizens that are just being paid at a low rate. And so, as our labor rates continue to be artificially suppressed by immigration, it's just less good paying jobs for, I would say, everybody, but especially young people. And I think there's a lot more young people right now who would be willing to get into learning how to build houses and be in construction if you're going to pay them, a good wage of, I'd say, around, $30, maybe mid 20s. But, if you can get immigrants here doing it for $10 an hour, many companies are going that route, and essentially you're just siphoning money to a handful of rich people at the expense of the middle class. And that's kind of what we've seen over the last handful of decades in America is, pricing out the middle class worker for cheap labor. And so hopefully we'll see that continue to not happen. And for the sake of the immigrants, if they do come and they are able to land work, I hope that some kind of legislation is passed so that they get fair, equal pay. Because, I just don't see how we build a country that allows people to come here and work for less than minimum wage. And, to me, that's not much different than slavery. And you could agree or disagree. But at the end of the day, I think that, if you're paying one person less than another person based on where they live, or which is really all it is, based on where they live, to me that's discrimination. But anyway, long story short, I do expect for the Northeast real estate market to continue to stay hot. I don't see any signs of weakness, and if anything, I see a lot of immigration coming here from other parts of the country. So, if anybody local is listening, my advice to you, if you are a young person, I would not drag your feet much longer. If you're able to afford something that's livable, it might not be a bad idea to try and snatch it up, because I don't see a scenario where prices will drop just because, like I said, they're already comparative to the rest of the country less than half the price. And so if the price to build anew is continuing to rise, it's over double the price of an existing house. So keep that in mind, and be very careful, because we've talked about this before, but America is kind of segregating into, in my opinion, two different classes: a K-shaped country where you got the rich getting richer and the poor getting poorer. And it's all fueled by printing money at the government level. And so the affordability rates of houses are, I think, at record lows still, meaning that the amount of money, I think you have to earn 133 grand a year to afford the median priced home, like at the current mortgage rates. And based on what we're seeing in the macro environment, I would say that interest rates are going to remain fairly high, if you consider where we're at high right now. I don't see a scenario where they get lowered. We could talk about that. I think we talked about that in earlier shows. So lots of bad scenarios there. And so if you are a young person, be careful, because I truly believe that we might be entering into a world where home ownership is indeed a pipe dream, and it's going to be out of reach for the average person, just because, if prices don't retreat, if they stay where they're at, even in Pennsylvania, if the average home costs 300 grand, and interest rates stay around 6 to 7%, the affordability of that is going to be exponentially difficult for most people. And the only way that those prices ever come down is if the efficiency of building a house increases rapidly. And I just don't see that happening for, I would say, at least 5 to 10 years if it happens. We haven't seen much progress here in the States. It's being done around the world, so maybe there's hope there. But the cost of that, obviously, is with automation, you're going to lose a lot of good paying jobs for home builders as well. So it's a good trade-off. So that's kind of my breakdown of the Northeast real estate market. Elias, I'm going to hand off over to you if you want to comment on anything there, or if you want to talk about something else. The floor is yours, man.
Yeah, so I was just going to say, I agree with you. I think that for young people, I think it's especially important that they try to get ahead of the curve. I don't know that it's necessarily infeasible, but I think that I found a statistic that roughly the top 10% of wealth, or the wealthiest 10% of people in the United States control about 70% of the nation's total wealth. I think that also, like, kind of shows that the board's stacked against young people. I don't think that it's impossible to get out of it, but I think that we need to really focus down on financial literacy. I know that my school that I went to in high school, right as I was coming through, like my junior, senior year, they started bringing through financial literacy classes, which was hugely important because a lot of us didn't even know, like, what was like considered a high interest rate on a credit card or whatever else. Whereas the top 10%, this is probably pretty common knowledge. So I think for us, especially our area, I think how we get out is financial literacy. I think that's huge, and the importance of investing early and choosing the right investment vehicles, such as like a Roth IRA or something else. Where, I mean, those might be capped, but if you can max out your contribution each month, then let it sit for 50 or 60 years. To somebody get in around 20, I don't think it's uncommon to be like on the low end, sitting on like $500,000, $600,000. That's conservative. I don't want to oversell it, but if you start like, I think they said if we start at 18, put in $8,000 to contribute like $50 or $100 a month, you can sit around like 1.6 million. That's I wouldn't quote me on that. You'd have to look at a calculator, but that's still a substantial amount of money. Even if you can't use it, that's money you can pass on to your kids even to reverse that trend. So I think that for us, yes, being a homeowner is going to be difficult, but I think there's steps that we can preemptively take to make sure the cycle stops with us. I think that that's the biggest thing is finding a way to break down the wealth inequality within the U.S. And I think that until Congress catches on and makes moves to fix that, which I don't know that they will, especially after the People versus United ruling, I can't remember what year that was in, but essentially they said that how people spend their money is their constitutional right, which makes things hard because then, like, for us that don't have a ton of money, we can't put a ton of money into candidates to get them into the limelight to fix things. It's just going to be people that are wealthy that support the candidates that continue to help what they're doing. Which then comes down to advocacy for voting and reaching out to your local representatives and congressmen and governors to try to make changes on a local scale, because that's just as impactful as the national level. But I think that there's still a lot that we can do. It's just that we need to be systemic in how we do it. I don't know if you've seen a similar trend or not, but like that's what I've definitely been picking up on. And I think that, especially for our area, 140, I think was the average, or you said like near 200,000. I think that's still doable. It'll be difficult for sure, but if you were to go and get something like an FHA loan, I know we've talked about this before. That's huge. Like you need to have, I think it's 2 years of steady income. Like to qualify for me, you need a credit score of, I think it was 500 to 580 was the minimum. But if you have no credit history and you started, or somehow you get in with your parents, like through their credit history, like if you join it through like one of their bank accounts or something else, and they co-sign, I think some way their credit history transfers to you, which immediately boosts your credit score. So for younger people in the area, I would say definitely get in with FHA loans, set yourself up in like a quadplex, pay rent on one of those units yourself, and then collect rent on the other 3 units if you can. I think that's huge too. I think it's not just buying a home, but finding a way to make sure that your homes are assets, not a liability. I think that's the biggest thing. Because homes can either be one of two things. It can either be an asset because they generate you cash, or a liability because you're just paying a mortgage and you're not earning any money off of that mortgage. So I think that's the biggest thing is like financial literacy to help find creative solutions that we can turn everyday things that we're paying for into assets instead of having them as just liabilities. So yeah, I don't know what your thoughts are on that, but that's kind of what I've seen.
Yeah, man, good stuff. I agree 100%. If you can, try to unplug. I don't know if you're using the headset mic or phone mic, but it got a little choppy there. It was clear when you first talked, but that last segment was pretty choppy. So I'm not sure if you can play with your mic settings there. But we were able to make out what you were saying nonetheless. And I do agree. I think whenever you do look for buying your first piece of real estate, if you are able to, think about those things in advance. It doesn't even have to be buying a duplex, but if you're able to section off a room to Airbnb, or section off a room to even rent out to your friend, if you're a single person or if you're married and you don't mind, those are creative ways to kind of, you can help out your buddy and help out yourself pay the mortgage. But I think that ultimately, even though rents have kind of, I think, dropped the last maybe year, or I should say it's a lot cheaper to rent than buy now. And that wasn't the case a couple of years ago. It was actually cheaper to buy than it was to rent. And that number is always going to, kind of change, but typically it is cheaper to rent. But I will say that a lot of local landlords I'm talking to are kind of getting more frustrated. I think there's more people who are not able to make rent payments, and so I think that's overall going to negatively affect the rental market. I think there's going to be some people who start exiting, like landlords who kind of start to exit just because they don't want to deal with the headache of that. And so I kind of think that being a landlord, if you're going to do it, I would recommend learning handy skills before you step in, because if you have to hire a plumber, hire an electrician, hire a carpenter when stuff goes wrong, the cost adds up pretty quick. We actually just worked on a house in town. It's a duplex, and the roof's leaking, and so we patched it up. And it costs, I don't know what we ended up billing. I'm guessing probably, for a patch job, I think it was probably $700 to $800, just to patch the roof. Now, he got a quote for a new roof, and we're not going to do it because the roof is steep and it's not worth the risk for us. But whenever he finds a company to do it, the roof's probably going to be in the ballpark of 20 to 25 grand, I would say, for a new roof. And so that's just one thing that's wrong with it. It needs a new front porch, and so we kind of tried to do a quote for that. To redo that, you're looking at 5, 6, 7 grand, and so there's two projects there that don't necessarily scream huge, but you add them up and you're looking at 30 grand. So if you don't have the cash to pay those, you can't put a roof off. It's already leaking. So once if you have to take a loan out to replace the roof, that's where things can kind of start to go south, because if you have a mortgage you're trying to pay on, then you have a loan to fix the place, and then one of your tenants decides not to pay you for the month, it kind of puts you in a pretty tough bind. So if you are going to go the route of renting, what I would recommend, once again, try and get handy skills. Go work with a carpenter. Go, be an apprentice for a couple months just to learn the basics so you can fix stuff if it breaks. And obviously, bring a carpenter when you go to look at a property to see if there's any problems, because one of the worst things you could do is buy a place and have issues you didn't know were there, and then you're borrowing money to fix stuff before you can even rent it. So I do think that's a good strategy, though. I would say the route I would go right now is I would buy a single family home, because they do appreciate faster than duplexes, quadplexes in nature. And so you're going to be able to ride the appreciation. You'll be able to live there. And I would try to rent out a room to a friend, or, like I said, Airbnb a room or a section, or even get creative with it. Where me and my wife are working on kind of converting our backyard into a glamping area, and that's going to be a bit of a project, but we're hoping to get there maybe by the fall, and hoping to generate some revenue that way. And that's kind of just using that creative mindset. I never thought about that when I bought the house. I got our house at a great deal, and now that I look at it, there's potential that I never thought about. And so whenever you're looking at houses, if it has land, that's potential. You could use that to generate income, stuff like that. Just try and be creative with it. And one final point, if you are buying a house, like I said, It's typically cheaper to get something that needs remodeled. Ideally, nothing that's structurally wrong or majorly wrong. Um, if you can just basically paint the walls and throw new flooring down, if you can visualize the difference that will make, and you can even use AI, start, just take some pictures of the rooms and have them swap out some stuff to see what it'd look like. You can kind of tell if it's something that you would like or not. Um, those are cheap things to do that you could, learn pretty quick. They're not very complicated. Um, if you can find a place that's structurally sound that just needs a little bit of TLC, um, that's typically a better deal than if you go and buy a house that's freshly remodeled, because they're going to charge, they're going to try and get as much as they can for it versus someone who's just lived in a house and they passed away or they've moved on or they just want to get out. So you'll get better deals on those places. And the cool part is, if you replace the floors, if you paint the walls, just visually adding stuff, you're actually increasing your net worth while you do it, because those modifications will make the house more valuable. And so, for our house, I got it for a great deal. I think I got it for 65,000 about 5 years ago at this point, and the roof was leaking. It needed some work, but it kind of scared a lot of people away, so I snatched it up for really cheap, and really painted the walls, put new flooring down, put some new trim down, made a big difference. The kitchen was actually pretty much remodeled, which is a huge bonus. Replaced the bathroom, and yeah, put a new roof on it. And so, all in all, doing pretty much the work myself, or my father doing it. I think we have close to 25 grand in repairs, maybe 30 grand. Put some mini splits in it ourselves, and just by doing that stuff, the value is now worth around 200 grand. So 5 years, you're talking 135,000, I think it is, of increase in net worth. And like I said, my investment might be 35 grand. So over the course of 5 years, that's $100,000 difference, which equates to $20,000 per year. That you're, like you said, you make just by adding value, adding net worth. And so, that's the easiest way to increase your net worth, is to buy assets and make them more valuable, basically, if you can. Obviously, I hold a lot of cryptocurrency, and there's ways to do it there too. But in real estate, look in terms of how can I increase value? What can I make? How can I make this more desirable? And so, if you find something that's not desirable by nature, and you do the work to make it desirable, naturally you're going to increase the value of it. But yeah, long term real estate around here. If you live in a market that's hot, you're talking cities, Texas, whatnot. Do some research. I wouldn't recommend buying a place there, especially if you're talking like 400 grand. Look up how much it costs to build a new house, and if the median price is around that area, then there's room for the price to come down. But if you can comfortably buy a house at lower rates, a significantly lower rate than the cost to build a new house, I don't see how you're going to lose money, essentially, especially if you're planning to live there for 5-10 years. I don't see a scenario where prices go down. So that's kind of my advice. Worked out great for me, and that's kind of what I would recommend for young people. It's really tempting to buy the remodeled place that looks really fancy, but I would recommend staying away from that unless you can comfortably do it and you don't have any desire to learn handyman skills. Then I guess that's the route to go. But otherwise, if you're willing to put in some work and learn the skills, you can probably make more money doing that than you will working a whole year at your job post taxes. Because the thing is, when you appreciate your real estate, That's all basically tax free. I believe you can legally sell a house every 2 years and pay 0% capital gains tax on it. So, you know, if you're flipping your primary residence, if you really wanted to be creative, you could just buy a house, live in it a couple years, remodel it, and then sell it, move on to the next one, essentially pay no capital gains. I would double check that to see. I'm pretty sure, like I said, it's 2 years, but there's definitely opportunities like that. And so, whenever you make money via capital gains, the tax rate is generally lower, and in a lot of people's instances, it's going to be zero regardless, especially if you're married. That's something that most people don't know, but yeah, I'll do a video on that in the future. I'm actually going to add that to my notes. But yeah, that's kind of my rant. So I'll hand it back off to Elias. I know you had something on your heart that you want to talk about. So go ahead and check your mic. I'll see if it sounds any better and roll from there.
Okay, sweet. I put in a Bluetooth earbud. I don't know if that's any better or not. Just tell me.
Yeah, still pretty choppy. I wonder if your mic's running through the Bluetooth. You might want to try turning that off while you speak, and then maybe because that should default back to your phone mic, which I think is probably better sound quality wise, maybe.
Okay. Yeah, I'm gonna go back to default. I just can't really hear when I'm on default, but that should be fine.
Okay, cool. Yeah, you sound great now. So we'll give you the floor and have at it.
Okay, you said it did sound fine.
Yep, loud and clear.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, so I was talking to him beforehand, and one of the things that I was praying about before this was like what to talk about. This is kind of a segue of sorts, but last night I came across scripture. It was Psalm 55, specifically verse 4. And to give context for the verse, it was about David and his son, Absalom. Absalom, I don't know how you say his name, but I thought there was a really cool verse. Just at surface level, like it's David kind of being really fed up with his son's rebellion. Like he just wants to leave. Like he kind of says he wishes that he had wings and he could fly off and leave it all behind. Which I think is relatable. I think it really speaks to the humanness of David. But then he kind of goes into this mourning and this grieving where he's like, how can someone that walked such a similar path to my own have fallen so far? And I think that it's a profound line of reasoning. It really shows not just David's character as a man of God, but also as a father. But David then goes on to put his trust fully in God. Like I'm trying to see where it is. That was verse 16. He says, as for me, I call to God, and the Lord sees me. Every morning, evening, morning, and noon, I cry in distress, and he hears my voice. He rescues me unharmed from the battle waged against me, even though many oppose me. God, who is enthroned from of old, who does not change, he will hear them and humble them, because they have no fear of God. My companion attacks his friends. He violates his covenant. His talk is smooth as butter, yet wars in his heart. His words are more soothing than oil, yet they are drawn swords. Cast your cares on the Lord, and he will sustain you. He will never let the righteous be shaken, but you, God, will bring down the wicked into the pit of decay. The bloodthirsty and the deceitful will not live out half their days, but as for me, I trust in you. Which I think is such a profound thing, that David's own son is rebelling from him, and if I remember right, his son ends up dying. I think he gets his hair caught in a tree branch, then he's killed as he's hanging there, which I think is huge. Like it's Dave, like every part of David as a father wants his son to come around, but he doesn't. But he puts his trust in one that's greater and ultimately controls the situation. And I think if we remove ourselves a layer, not just look at the context of like David surrendering to God, but applying it to our own lives, I think it's important to say like that we need to make sure that our priorities are in line. I think it says something about even when like we have our own human emotions, and when we mourn, we grieve, we have doubts, we should still put our trust in God, even though we may not know how it's going to play out, or we may not see the path ahead. Still just trusting in the one that designed all of it. I think that's huge. I think even in like finance and investing, like you need to go with what God's putting on your heart and what sound reasoning, not to give into pride and greed and go with what's easy or what's morally questionable, making sure that your thinking is sound, that it's aligned with what God has called for our lives. I think that's huge, because I think that, especially in Ecclesiastes, that they talk about a vanity of vanities, which essentially is like, like it's nothing of nothing. Like everything that we have on this earth, all the wealth that we make, all the wisdom and knowledge that we acquire, comes to nothing. All of our wealth is handed off to someone else, and all of our wisdom and knowledge dies with us. Or at least some of it. Like we can pass on a good bit of it, but we'll never get to pass on all of it. And there'll be things that we have uniquely understood that will die with us. But David then reasoned, I think it really was Solomon, one of the two, whoever wrote Ecclesiastes, starts reasoning, I think it was Solomon, starts reasoning, and they go, the only thing that matters is to toil on this earth and to do what is right by God. I think that's huge, especially because our salvation comes through Christ. The only thing we can do is give him gratitude, because we are inherently unworthy. And I think that that's, like, in a way, that's kind of like stark or sobering at first, but I think as you come around, it's also reassuring that such a heavy toll was paid for us, and yet all we have to do is take the free gift, repent, and just seek him and show gratitude to him and be living testimonies of him. Because the only thing we can offer is our testimonies. So I guess to anyone listening, my encouragement or my takeaway is just make sure that everything you do is aligned with him, because it's the only thing that matters. Because our money can't go with us. Sure, we can set up for our kids and our grandkids, but eventually that ends, and they'll have to build on their own. And if we don't have the sound moral foundation, then our kids will be left astray, and the money that we've earned amounts to nothing. So I think that that's the biggest thing, is how can we set up our lives to be living, breathing testimonies of him and his grace, and how can we make the world better with us? So that's kind of my takeaway with that, is to trust in him, even when it doesn't make sense, even when everything's falling apart. Trust in him, and just know that emotions like mourning, like grief, like doubt, like feeling lost are very normal things. And I think that even if you don't know where to go, an easy way to get started is to act in accordance with his will and get around other people. Like, you're not going to have all the answers right away. Maybe you will, and that's God's grace. But if not, it comes with time, and just being around like-minded believers will help you find reason when it may not be at first found. So yeah, that's kind of was on my heart. You're free to take that how you best think, but yeah.
Yeah, brother, good stuff. Agree 100%. And I think that, like you said, a key is not getting swallowed up in yourself and not getting swallowed up even in the investments. And so, I think one of the best things that we can do as believers when we sow seeds, when we invest, is to not be attached to that thing. And so, in other words, if we get none of our money back, if it falls apart, whatever, it shouldn't really affect us at all if the Lord told us to sow into that area, because that's kind of the ultimate level of peace you can find. When you go through a worldly perspective and it's all about, well, I got to make money here, I got to get a return, and if things go south and you lose money, then it's really easy to get upset at yourself, upset at God, upset at everything. But whenever you can sow into something that the Lord tells you to, even if it doesn't make money, even if it breaks even, you'll notice a lot of times that the investment in the kingdom is what really matters. And so we have the opportunity to sow seeds, change lives, impact our communities, and it's not always wise to expect financial return. And a lot of times we have to realize that there's a spiritual harvest and a spiritual return. We'll get on those things as well. But yeah, good stuff there, man. I appreciate you sharing that. And I think that it really does speak to an area that's been on my heart, which is just around the hardship I think a lot of young people are going through right now. This morning I actually read it was, I think, Psalm 81. So for those listeners, I would recommend. Oh, yeah, Psalm 88. Sorry. Kind of just a poetic outpouring of David's heart about feeling abandoned by the world and his friends. But I think a lot of young people, I know a handful, who are really struggling right now to land a decent job or land any job in their field, to be specific. These are people who have had their degrees for a while. They apply at, pretty much everything. They might get interviews and they might get shut down. And the interesting thing about this, what's going on, is that these people are applying basically across the board for any pay level. Like, they don't even necessarily care how good the pay is. One job for an IT, like an IT whatever analyst, was paying $17 an hour, and my friend applied trying to get the job, and didn't even get an interview for it. So that level of competitiveness is really not a good thing, because $17 an hour is pitiful for a job that is has a college education tied to it. So you try and live on $17 an hour. It is doable for a single person, but you get a family trying to pay rent on a 2-bedroom apartment and all that stuff. It gets pretty tricky pretty quick. So that's something that we all need to be aware of. I really think young people are possibly at one of the most difficult segments in American history. Probably not the most difficult. I think 2008 was probably a lot worse than this, and obviously the Great Depression. But I believe the unemployment rate for young people is double the national average, and so there's a lot of pain right now for young people, especially that they're having to pay back their student loans. That's coming back on, and in some instances, the government's actually taking money from paychecks if people don't pay, and so default rates are probably headed to 20%, and the government's just going to start confiscating wages. And so it's a really bad scenario for America, because if the young people are not engaged, if the young people are not hopeful, if they're not, optimistic about their country and their future, it really trickles pretty quick, and I think that's exactly where we're at. And I think that, unfortunately, they have good reason to be upset. There's just really, they've been sold a big lie that there's all these good-paying jobs available post-college degree, and so a lot of people have these degrees and, can't land a job. I'm telling you, if you looked at, cybersecurity and you go to the website of the government, they'll tell you there's all these hundreds of thousands of job openings, and the average wage is like $80,000, and you'll make all this money out of college, and then you graduate college with this degree, and you can't even land a $17 an hour job. I mean, it's just sad. It's comically sad, and you wonder why young people are, getting depressed pretty quick. It makes sense to me, and obviously as Christians we have an advantage over them. People that don't know Christ, I don't know how you cope with it, and that kind of explains why, suicide rates and deaths of despair, which is death by alcoholism and whatnot, they're at the highest rate since the Great Depression, and so that's pretty significant, And so at the end of the day, like we talked about earlier, people are looking for purpose, they're looking for hope, they're looking for reason, and they're not finding it in their careers, they're not finding it in their lives, and so we live in this really depressing era. And so as Christians, we have to pivot, and I think we have to start being more community centered. We're the ones that have to step up and take risk and create businesses that can create meaningful jobs for these people, where they feel like they are contributing to the better and fulfilling a purpose. And I think that that's kind of the first step towards sharing the gospel to people, and I think that's how you open up hearts. So that's the direction I'm heading anyway. But we'll kind of segment into the ending here this show. It's been a great discussion so far, but talk about crypto briefly. Haven't checked the prices today, but we did have a pretty significant drop in prices a couple days ago. There was a feud between Elon and Trump on some things, and I think Bitcoin recovered to around 105, dropped to close to 100. So it's holding pretty strong, which is encouraging to me. I think if we would have broke 100, it could have been, had some fairly downward pressure on it, but it looks like we're holding pretty steady here. So I would anticipate some smoothly upward sailing ahead, at least for Bitcoin. I'm still holding my altcoins. I did buy a little bit of Solana this week, I think around 150. So I thought that was a pretty fair price. And I did sign up for the Gemini cashback and crypto card, so I'm excited to start using that. And those are pretty great ways to, start investing early. If you have no other mind to do it, then get a card that pays you cashback in crypto, and you can kind of start stashing that away depending how much you spend per month. It's an easy way to start, so I would recommend that to young people. It's a good way to get some free crypto and kind of get exposure to the volatility of it. But one more final point. Like Elias said, a lot of people have fear when they do or when they're looking to invest or they invest. And I've talked to multiple people over the last month or two who are interested in investing, but they can't stomach the volatility, and they become overwhelmed with fear when they step out to do it. And so it's just I just want to say that it's very important to start somewhere and build that level of faith and trust, because especially something like crypto and even gold at this point, gold's become pretty volatile. In investing, if you want to make high returns, there's going to be volatility almost always. And so once you get used to that, you have to start somewhere. And so whenever you trust in the Lord and you believe that He tells you to buy a stock or a coin, you put your money into it. And if you don't have the required level of faith, you're going to end up losing, because the price will drop a couple percent. The devil will tell you that you made a mistake, that you messed up, and you'll let fear overwhelm you, and then you'll sell at a loss, as I know many people have. And it's sad, because if you just would have held, now you'd be in the green by, a pretty significant amount. But it's a matter of understanding that volatility is a thing, and I think in the kingdom of God, there's always going to be faith that is tested and required. And so whenever the Lord tells you to step out, it's almost never going to be smooth sailing. There's always going to be hardships or risks or uncertainty. And I've been in crypto for 7 years, and I sometimes get shaken by drops as well. And it's just a matter of understanding what the Lord's told you, and having the faith to keep going, and not allowing that voice of fear to shake you out. But it's a real thing. And so those who are able to withstand that the longest and hold the longest are the ones that are going to make out the best. And that's kind of how the investing world works. So, but crypto, pull back a bit. I do like Solana. I do like Polkadot. I think Sui dropped around $3 too, which is a pretty good buy. If you could buy Sui under $3.50, $3.50, probably a good pickup there. Polkadot, anything under $4, generally pretty good. You get a nice around 10% staking yield APR per year on that coin. So it's a good way to earn passive income, and the benefits of staking crypto are pretty incredible in my book. If you change your mindset and think, okay, like if I can accumulate, $1 million worth of Solana, and it pays on average 6% APR in, interest for holding it, that's $60,000 a year you can generate by literally doing nothing. And if the price of Solana appreciates by 20% on average, you're going to also make $200,000 in appreciation on your assets. Plus, you'll earn 60 grand, so you're talking $250,000. If you can get to that point. And so that's where the craziness happens, and that's kind of why we always say the rich get richer, because once you start to understand how this stuff works, the people who are in it for the long haul and they keep on steadily building and increasing, they're the ones that benefit from the appreciation exponentially. And so that's why, like Elias said, you have to start early, start today. Don't put this off, because the longer you wait, the more you miss out. So yeah, that's kind of what I had for the show. Elias, I'm going to hand off to you. Any other closing thoughts or things you want to say, and we'll go ahead and shut her down.
Yeah, I think that, like you said, I think it's important that you have faith in God. And for me, going more from the entrepreneurial side of things, I'd say to anyone out there, play into your strengths. Like, ask God to show you what His will for your life is, and to kind of show you the path that lies ahead. I think reflect back on what you've always enjoyed. If you've always been more analytical, like for me, I'm a chemistry major. I've been more analytical, so there's been a huge appeal to the investing work. It's a lot of numbers, and I enjoy working with numbers. But I also enjoy talking with people and learning as much as I can. So for me, like, it's kind of set me up, or like, I feel like it gives me a pretty good hand to go into business. I've been praying, and I think that it's the direction I'm supposed to be heading in. But I encourage anyone out there, really do some soul searching and take risks on yourself. I think take educated risks. I wouldn't say make foolish risks, but I would say make educated risks. Like, search your heart and ask God to reveal things to you. And like you said, I think that you need to be able to kind of step out in the water in a way too. I think you need to trust in God. Even when you fall through the water, trust that He'll reach His hand out and catch you. I think that it's incredible. This saying that I really like, which is God accounts for your own stupidity. So I think have faith that even when things don't go right, trust that He's already planned for that. He already knows that you're going to make the mistakes that you make. And just play into your strengths. Have fun with it. And just pull it out. I think that that's the biggest thing, is don't claim the money, don't have a tight fist and keep it balled up in your fist. Pull it out. Give back. Help build the kingdom with the money that you have. I know that we talked about a book called The Multiplication Factor. It's a book I absolutely love. And it's all about there's different gifts, but like, one of the gifts is being financiers for the kingdom, and I think that's huge. So I think that for people that want to get into investing and want to get into the finance world, just keep in mind to be pouring out, and you'll be surprised how God can multiply that when you invest with His heart in mind and with His intentions in mind. I think if you do that, then He'll give you exactly what you need. Anything else is a bonus. So yeah, that's pretty much all I have, and I can let you close it out however you normally do.
Amen, brother. Love that. Take a risk, have some fun. I think that's important. People who don't take risks in life generally will probably live a less fulfilling life, in my opinion. It's fun to invest. It's fun to take risk, especially when you see it come to fruition. It's an amazing feeling. So. But yeah, great show, man. Elias, we appreciate you coming on. Hopefully we will see you in future episodes. And for those who listen, we appreciate you tuning in. May the Lord direct and guide each of your decisions. And if you have any questions, you can DM either of us, and we'll be happy to address or answer those things as time permits. But otherwise, we appreciate you guys. Take care and have a wonderful week. Cheers.